Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the channel. My name is Sam, and this is SamCentre, a show I do 3 times a week. Mondays, I try and keep it a little bit more general, recap the weekend that was. Wednesdays, we talk CFL, the Canadian Football League, and on Fridays, we like to talk about the UFC and potentially any games that are happening on the slate across the NFL, CFL, and all professional leagues. Without further ado, let's get into the first segment we like to call Let's Get Saucy. All right, fellas. This week we're getting a little saucy. I'm going to have some hot takes. You're going to have some hot takes. That's all right. We have the comment section down below where we can discuss these things. Let's have those discussions. Let's be respectful. Let's not be respectful. I don't care. Freedom of speech, baby. Into the show we go. The UFC had a fight night on Saturday. Gabriel Bonfim took on Bilal Muhammad in the main event, and this is a card from a more casual perspective. I can understand if you skipped it. The Paramount era has brought to us consistency. I believe it's something along the lines of 48 fight cards in the 52 weeks of the year, which as a more hardcore fan, it's awesome. But I'll be honest, the prelims and a lot of these fights I do have on a second screen as I'm watching something else. Whereas a card like next week, where we go to the Freedom 250 UFC White House card, it is Donald Trump's birthday celebration. His favorite fighter, Derek Lewis, is fighting on the card. We're going to have Sugar Sean O'Malley. We're going to have Diego Lopez, Cyril Gane versus Alex Pereira. We have Ilia Tuporia taking on Justin Gaethje. Friday, we're going to get deeper into that card and why you should care about that. But that's a really exciting card. That's something you can have on, bring your buddies together, and really put on because every single one of those 7 fights will be a banger. Without further ado, let's talk about the fight night that was on Saturday. The prelims are typically more exciting. One thing that you might not understand if you don't tune into different UFC cards, different areas, different promotions have different kind of regulations around the fights. So when we say the Apex, that's a venue that the UFC has built in Las Vegas to put on these cards. The cage is a little smaller compared to some of the larger main events, and so that leads to more finishes often, which is what we saw on the prelims. Multiple finishes that I won't go over, but what I will say, my product of Mexico, Viva Mexico, mi amigo, Edgar Chairez, he was a lock. It was clear to me that he was going to beat a 36-year-old Bruno Silva, who's on the decline. My boy Edgar Chairez, Mexican dog, he wasn't going to give up. Found that neck in round 1, and truly he's a guy that you can watch in that division. Someone to be excited about, taking on a Bruno Silva who has had lots of UFC fights. I think it's an impressive win for Chairez. Another fight on the prelim I was super excited to see go his way was Marcus McGee taking on John Yanis. Marcus McGee is a little bit older on the prospect side of things. He's in his late 30s. At 135, typically that's a recipe for disaster. The smaller weight classes, these guys don't do as well later in their careers. But Marcus McGee might be one of those guys who can sustain. He's got that smooth boxing style. He keeps that hand tucked and he keeps rolling. That Philly shell, he'll roll off. He went to a really competitive decision with Petr Yan. To me, that was impressive. It wasn't necessarily something that, oftentimes we overrate losses on guys, but Marcus McGee is a guy you can be excited about. You can understand he's going to come in there. He's going to bring you a fight. He won by TKO, an impressive display of boxing. And if we move on to our main card, this is where things got a little interesting. I'm not even going to discuss Junior Tafa. He came there for a paycheck. He took one leg kick from a massive Polish man and decided he didn't want to be there anymore. That's disgusting, disrespectful, but ultimately I can't blame the guy. You know what? Short notice fill-in, came into Vegas, took an L. It is what it is. Junior Tafa, you should go to kickboxing. And I don't even know if you should go to kickboxing because you can't take a leg kick from a guy in the first round. If you can't take a leg kick and you're a kickboxer, what are we doing here? Anyways, Bryce Mitchell took on Santiago Luna, and this Santiago Luna is a guy I'm extremely excited about. Another one of mi Mexicano amigos, Santiago Luna at 21 years old took on Bryce Mitchell and truly gave him a competitive fight. You know, he had Bryce busted up in a couple spots. He was competitive in the wrestling, in the grappling exchanges. But there are levels to this, and I think that was shown very clearly in this fight. Bryce Mitchell is a guy at 135 who, you know, he has high level jiu-jitsu, he has high level ground game, not much outside of that. He's tough. I do question the chin. If if you gave a guy like Luna full camp, or if Bryce starts to move up the ranks at 35, he doesn't look super healthy on the scales. He can make the weight. I'm just not entirely convinced that he's going to be great against some of these guys like the O'Malley's if he gets to that level. But why bother? Why do we need to throw him against those guys? We know who Bryce is at this point. Throw him up against a Rahul Rosas, throw him up against another grappler, and let's have some fights like that because they're entertaining. He doesn't just lay and pray, he goes for submissions. He talks his stuff on the mic afterwards. He gives glory to the Lord, but at the same time, he says some things that maybe God wouldn't be too impressed with. I don't judge. Bryce Mitchell, impressive win, finds the submission of Santiago Luna, who is coming in on short notice. But what I will say about Santiago Luna, this is a man you need to watch. Mark my words, 21 years old, now 8-1, came in on short notice and gave Bryce Mitchell a very competitive fight. Product of Mexico, future top 15 guy, Santiago Luna. Very impressed with them both. Tom Nolan versus Faris Ziam. I'm not impressed with French fighters. I'm happy he lost. I don't really care for guys who just stay at a distance, point fight, that sort of thing. Saying that, some of my favorite fighters are Anderson Silva and Israel Adesanya, so maybe I'm no one to talk. Faris Ziam, not a guy I was really looking forward to. Tom Nolan, he'll bring the fight. You know, he wrestles, he'll engage you in grappling, he'll engage you in striking. That's a guy you want in the UFC. You know, both guys have a path. Neither guy's going to get cut. It's just, unanimous decision. Great fight by Tom Nolan. Brendan Allen versus Shabazian. Now, Brendan Allen ruined all of my parlays when he came to Vancouver and absolutely made Reinier de Ridder quit on the stool in front of me as I booed the man. Listen, I was a little upset. I lost some money on Reinier de Ridder. I did not make that same mistake this week. I bet on Brendan Allen. And I was unimpressed by his performance. I am unimpressed by your performance. Honestly, to me, he went out there and he won the fight. He knew what he had to do. But I think Edmund has a completely overrated power aspect of his game. I think his striking is overrated. And so to go to a fairly close fight with Edmund, I know on the scorecards it was 30-27, 30-27, 29-28. That's great. But it wasn't like he was completely running away with things. You know, Edmund gasses, and he didn't really gas because Brendan didn't do anything. So again, certified Brendan Allen hater who this time made the right decision. I am not impressed with his performance. In the main event, however, I am extremely impressed with Gabriel Bonfim. Now, Bilal Muhammad has been somebody that I have loved to hate on for many years. These Canelo hands, this idea that he points things out. I don't believe it. I believe he pushes you up against the fence in the fight. He's durable, he's tough, and that's about it. And that's what we saw on Saturday night. He went out there and he was tough. He came forward like a zombie, and that was about it. He got pieced up by Gabriel Bonfim, and Bonfim's chin was right there the entire time. Bilal saw it. He started to swing overhands in about round 2 or 3 because he saw what I saw. That chin is straight up in the air, and he doesn't move his head. But at this point in his career, 38 years old, with the pillow hands, Bilal Muhammad is not the guy to get that done. 50-45 unanimous decision for Gabriel Bonfim. We have a contender in the weight class, and I hope we never have to see Bilal fight in the main event again because I hate the guy. Not personal, mainly just fight style thing. Let's move on to next week's show. I'm going to recap this slightly, but on Friday we're going to go a lot deeper into it because we have the Freedom 250 White House card. Guys, this is something you can really get excited for. The main card is filled with bangers. We're going to see Justin Gaethje take on Ilia Topuria for the actual undisputed belt, because right now Justin obviously beat Paddy Pimblett for the interim title belt, while Ilya stepped away to go through a divorce and a lot of other personal issues. We're going to see how things look. There's rumors, that Ilya's already thinking about moving up. I don't think Justin's a guy you can look past, but at the same time, I'm not entirely convinced his boxing or technique is clean enough to deal with the strikes of Ilya mixing in with that Greco-Roman wrestling. I do think it's probably going to be an impressive performance. We have Alex Pereira taking on Cyril Gane in the co-main event for the heavyweight championship of the world. I love Potan. I'm a little worried for him in this spot. We'll discuss it more on Friday. I think Gane is a true heavyweight. I think he looked fairly clean against Tom Aspinall in his last fight before the obvious, which I'm going to talk about, another French fighter who's dirty and boring and just stands at range and points fights. I don't like that fight for Pereira. I like guys who will engage with him and strike. I'm a little worried Gane is going to keep it at range, poke him in the eyes twice, kick him in the nuts, and we're all going to be pissed off at the Frenchman for doing this to us again. I hope I'm wrong. I hope Potan hits him with a left and sleeps him, but we're going to see. Moving down the card, we have some more fun fights. We have Sugar Sean O'Malley in a striking match. We have Michael Chandler taking on Rufy, which I think should be a guaranteed KO. Probably Chandler going to sleep. We have the all-time heavyweight knockout king Derek Lewis taking on the WWE-esque superstar in Josh Hokett. Josh is honestly his on the mic antics is one thing. He's an impressive mixed martial artist. I'm not entirely sure he has the striking to deal with a Derek Lewis, but that might not matter in this fight. This man is a collegiate wrestler. This man will push you up against the fence, and he's tough, he's durable, he will come forward. We will see what happens. Honestly, very excited about this. I'm a little concerned about the outdoor aspect of the card. I think there's going to be bugs. I think it's going to be hot. There's a forecast of rain. Let's get into it on Friday. But boys, let's enjoy this fight card. It's on the White House grounds. This might be something we never see again in our lifetimes. 2 title fights, 7 fights that are worth watching. I'm excited. We're going to talk about it Friday a little bit further. Moving on with the show, something I'm incredibly passionate about is the Canadian Football League. And is it better than the National Football League? The answer might be yes, it might be no. Let me know in the comments section below. But what I will say is this. The Canadian Football League put on an excellent opening slate of games. There were 3 games this week in which all 3 games were settled within 1 score. 1 game went to overtime, another game was settled within 2 points, and my Edmonton Elks, baby, first time in 7 years, we've started 1-0. And I promise you now, we are rebuilding the culture with the Edmonton Elks. Anything I can do to grow this league, I will do. On Wednesdays, we're going to have a show dedicated towards the CFL. I'll try and get guests from different teams across the league and really just bring in a fan perspective. If this is your first introduction to the Canadian Football League, welcome. We have an awesome league full of amazing players and amazing teams. My favorite being the Edmonton Elks, but I know everyone else has their favorites. In the comments, let us know. What I'll say about the Canadian Football League, if this is your first time tuning in, it's a little bit different. We have 3 downs instead of 4 downs. That would be the major difference, as well as the field is larger and the goalposts are moved to the front of a larger end zone. So when you see our games, at first it might seem a little goofy. You'll hear about rules and you'll think, that's really dumb. But once you see the games played, the way that the 2 downs work, there's so much more passing, big play potential, and a team is never out of the game because in the NFL, you can run down 2 minutes quite quickly. If you get the ball and a team has no timeouts left, 2 minutes left in the game, that game is over. To me, that obviously adds an element of strategy. All respect to the NFL. I'm a massive Colts fan. I say that in sadness these past couple of years. Massive fan of the NFL, massive fan of college football. But there's a lot to that game that just really takes out the excitement near the end of it. You kind of know who's going to win. Minus 28-3 in the Super Bowl, obviously. But there's different elements of things where you kneel the ball, the game is over. In the Canadian Football League, it's a little bit more difficult. you have two downs essentially. And if you're not going to get those 10 yards or get somewhat close, you're going to punt it away because you don't want to risk turning it over on third down. So now the time and the amount of time that you can run out at the end of the game is quite different. If the clock hits zero while you have a play going, you cannot just end the game. You have to run another play. So something like the NFL, 2 minutes left, no timeouts, game is over. CFL, 2 minutes left, no timeouts. That game is still very much alive. And that's what we saw this weekend. We saw a game between the Montreal Alouettes taking on the Hamilton Ticats in Hamilton, opening night of the CFL, Thursday night football, baby, and man, was it exciting. The Alouettes came back in the fourth quarter. Davis Alexander is still undefeated in the regular season as a starter in the Canadian Football League. Obviously, he lost the big one. That's what he likes to say. But to be undefeated across all of his starts in the regular season as a CFL starter is incredible. Tip your hat to Montreal. They went into Hamilton, came back on the road, ended up taking that game in overtime. The next game on Friday night was the Calgary Stampeders taking on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and two franchises. Winnipeg's had a lot of success over the past few years. Their home crowd is electric. If you're around Winnipeg, if you ever have a chance to go to Winnipeg, please check them out. They have something like 37 straight home sellouts. Truly an incredible atmosphere. I tip my hat to you, Winnipeg, as an Elks fan. Um, but you went in there and they beat the Calgary Stampeders, a game where honestly I thought Calgary had a very good chance of winning. And I think they'll be kicking themselves because they were up as well. They had a bit of a collapse. Winnipeg kept fighting. Two incredible running backs that you saw in that game. We have Mills for the Calgary Stampeders, who personally I think is a lock for a touchdown every week that he plays, just because the man is incredible within that short yardage range, especially. And then you have Brady Oliveira, who is an incredible running back for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. He does more than just run. He catches the ball out of the backfield. He really creates mismatches to where then the Winnipeg Blue Bombers can spread the field and open up their passing game on the outside. That larger field, if you have a running back like Oliveira, your offense unlocks a whole nother dimension. And that's what we saw truly. The Stampeders were missing a couple D linemen. They just got worn down and they got beat by the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in a very tight game there on Friday night. And then the star of the show is the double E baby. We love what we see from Mark Killam and his staff. It is now a 1-0 start for the Edmonton Elks. The first time in 7 years. I've been affiliated with the team in some capacity for 4 years. It's the first time in 4 seasons that I've seen 1-0. I could not be more excited and proud of that team and the organization that we have. I'll preface by saying we beat Ottawa. Ottawa could be horrible. Jake Maier, I'm not a massive fan of that QB. I saw him play last year against us when he was with the Stampeders, and we picked him off multiple times. I just think his decision making is not good enough to be a CFL starting quarterback. I think the backup over there in Ottawa, Brown, is a much better choice. Honestly, he's someone I wish the Elks would target as a potential replacement for Cody. But Drew is really talented. I won't hate too hard on Ottawa. They've made a lot of changes. They really kept it competitive. But turnovers costed them, as every Jake Maier start really does. When he gets in there against Edmonton, he sees the green and gold, he sees the double E, baby, and he starts seeing ghosts. We picked him off, we caused fumbles, and we fought hard to the end. What I'll say is this. Justin Rankin is a star. He is the best non-QB in the CFL, in my opinion. This man is going to go for 1,000 and 1,000 at some point if he can stay healthy. He went for over 100 yards rushing and almost 100 yards receiving, got a touchdown, and then got the Elks out of multiple situations where the game could have easily flipped. In my opinion, there were times where we were getting a little uncreative in our play calling, which is sometimes what happens where at the end of the game, you want to win, you want to run down that clock. And so we're prioritizing trusting our defense and maybe taking those short check downs, screen passes, give the ball to Rank. And it worked. The man has that Le'Veon Bell style running where he gets to the line of scrimmage, he sees what it is, he'll shift, he'll get in there, and then he'll hit the gap. To me, that is the sign of someone who is a pure talented running back. This man has the vision, he has the speed, he has the strength. Massive fan of number 5, massive fan of the double E. Austin Mack, huge catch in the end zone over there. Him and Cody Fajardo honestly should have that connection from their time in Montreal. Obviously, they were able to accomplish the ultimate goal together and had a ton of success in that system. It's something that I have a lot of faith for. So as our young receiving core, as Cody can grow with that team, if our offensive line can stay healthy, if Rankin can stay healthy, if Mack and Cody can sharpen their connection, you saw what this defense can do. We're missing Royce, we're missing some of our defensive linemen, and that's okay because we're already so good. When these guys come back, it's just going to be even more stacking upon it. So I'm really, really impressed by what I saw by the Elks, the Bombers, and the Alouettes this week. The Ticats, they have a high-flying offense. Bo Levi Mitchell is going to be in conversation for the most outstanding player again this year, and it's well-deserved. The man can absolutely sling the rock. They have a very, very good receiving core, but I'm not sold on that defense, and I think that's going to be something that haunts Hamilton. They're going to end up 1 or 2 over there in the East just because Toronto and Ottawa are quite. We'll see. I mean, I don't have a lot of faith for them this year. But what I will say, great performance from Montreal. If they can stay healthy, if Davis can really just keep competing, you can't bet against him. I mean, if you bet against Davis Alexander as the starting quarterback, you will lose unless it's the Grey Cup. Hey, listen, Davis, I love you. I think you're an excellent QB. Sorry, you've said it yourself. The big one got away. You'll win one. I have no question in my mind that will happen. Impressive by Montreal. Winnipeg went in there. They showed a few flaws. I think that defense and that running game is really going to carry them. But when they get behind against some of these other defenses, against the Edmonton Elks, against the Montreal Alouettes, against the Riders, against the Lions, I don't have a lot of faith in that passing game. They can prove me wrong, and they might. I really feel like Calgary threw that game away. And I think the Stampeders are going to be kicking themselves because Vernon Adams, what an incredible QB that man is. I mean, the drive that he led at the end of the game should be studied by QBs across the league as a blueprint of what to follow. That man made big throws in tight windows. He was stepping up in the pocket. He was running when he needed to. I'm a massive fan of Vernon Adams. What I'm not a fan of is that leaky defense at the end of the game where we sit back and we just hope that a team doesn't score on us. It's the same thing I criticize teams for. I'll criticize every team in the league for doing it because you see the Dan Campbells in the NFL, you see the coaches who really go for it, and oftentimes at the end of the game, they live with those decisions they made. These coaches who just get there and they think running out the clock, trusting our defense, that's not going to work in the CFL. These offenses are crazy. You give the ball to some of these quarterbacks with 30 seconds left, and they're going to drive 70 yards and put up points on you. And that's what we saw twice. We saw that in the Elks game. Luckily, we were able to pick off Mayer at the end of it. But we saw that in the Winnipeg game where the great drive by Vernon Adams and the Stampeders at the end of the game take a late lead and still leave a little bit of time left on the clock. Game's never over in the CFL. Impressive win by the Blue Bombers. On Wednesday, we're going to do a full look ahead at the next week's slate. We have the defending champs in action, the Saskatchewan Roughriders, the reigning coach of the year. We have the reigning MVP and honestly one of the more impressive advocates for our game and for our league in Nathan Rourke, debuting again next week with the BC Lions. An incredible human, an incredible advocate of the game, and honestly an amazing QB. If you like high-level QBs who will sling it and not worry about what's coming at them, watch Nathan Rourke this next week here. Wrapping up our CFL, that's why I believe there's a lot more competitiveness compared to the NFL. Obviously, you're going to have your stinker games, but there's no real organizations or no real weeks where you look at in the CFL and you think, you'd watch the Carolina Panthers in past years, or you'd watch the Jets. They might score 9 points. That's horrible football. I don't care. I don't want to watch Jacksonville and the New York Jets on Thursday night. I mean, I will watch it, but I don't want to watch that. What I saw on Thursday night out of the CFL was exciting, high-level football. What I see on Thursday nights out of the NFL oftentimes is the Jacksonville Jaguars going to play the New York Jets in London or something like that, and it's just terrible. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not. I love both leagues. I love all the leagues, but I want you to give the CFL a chance. If this inspired you at all, send me a message. I'll give you some information about where to watch, how to watch, and maybe why you should watch. Moving on. Number 4. Is this the best Stanley Cup final in history? And obviously, it's been 3 games. I can't say that yet, but through 3 games, it has been. No time in history have we seen a 4-goal comeback. We've seen it. Every single game has been one team takes a big lead, the next team comes back. Honestly, if you're a gambler, just take the plus money whenever a team goes by behind. You're gonna make money each time. I'm sure they're gonna be onto it, but it's been incredible hockey to watch. Mitch Marner and the Las Vegas Golden Knights are up 2-1 in the series after an overtime win in Game 3 over the Carolina Hurricanes. But man, what an incredible performance by both sides. 4-0 for the Golden Knights in Game 3 at home. I thought it was over. I turned it off. I'll be honest. Maybe I'm a fake fan. I'm an Oilers fan. I don't want to talk about it this year. We're not going to talk about it. But what I'll say is this: well deserved for the Vegas Knights organization, well deserved for the Carolina Hurricanes organization. The Vegas Knights just find ways to win. They go up, it gets tied, they go down, it gets tied, and then they find ways to win the close one. Where that was kind of Carolina's game, right? That's kind of what they've done throughout the playoffs. They were in close games against Montreal. They were in close games in their other series as well, but they always found a way to pull it out. And now they're facing a team in Vegas who is that team. For whatever reason, if it's the Vegas curse, if it's whatever it is, when teams come there, when they get under the bright lights, the Knights pull it off. And they have consistently, and honestly, going into things, I could see this series going 7 very easily. I could see it going 6 hard-fought games, probably another overtime or 2 mixed in here. But impressive by the Knights, impressive by the Canes, and we'll see. I think we're bound to see a 3-1 game, eventually here. We have to see something like that. That's kind of the game of the Hurricanes. Getting in these firefights when there's so much offensive talent on that Knights side is just not a great idea, in my opinion. Obviously, they want to play their game. 2 teams are playing. It's difficult. You're imposing styles. But if you're a fan of hockey, regardless if your team's in, if your team's out, whatever happened in your season, I think these finals should be making you a fan of hockey. They're fun, exciting. There's overtimes, there's big hits, there's lots of goals. It's in Vegas, it's in Carolina, back and forth. Tune into Game 4. I'm sure there's going to be a Game 6. I'm sure there's going to be a Game 7, but 4 and 5 are guaranteed. Should be really fun. Is it the best Cup Finals so far through 3 games? Yes. Is it the best finals ever? We're going to have to wait and see, obviously, but it's an excellent start for what was a fairly weak playoffs, in my opinion, for the NHL. There were a few really fun competitive series mixed in there, but for the most part, Carolina rolled. And some of these other teams just rolled, right? They won multiple games. Multiple of their stars were out quite early. Guys were getting hurt. So I think the NHL should be quite happy with these finals, obviously. It kind of saves the rest of it. I think not having the McDavids, not having the big names, you're getting a guy like Marner showing why Toronto is never going to win a cup. They are, and maybe they'll win a cup I'm sure they'll win a cup in my lifetime. I'm a young man, but not anytime soon because you let a guy like Marner walk, and now he's going to win the MVP of the playoffs if the Knights end up winning the Stanley Cup. He's an incredible player. He's worth every penny of what they played. Some of his goals this season, this playoffs, have been insane. He's showcasing why he's a top talent. You have Eichel. You have guys on that back end of the Vegas team who can play. They'd be my pick. Again, I'm just the one guy. Let me know what you think in the comments. Hockey is doing great as far as the finals. For the rest of the playoffs, I'm not sure. I loved it. And that's kind of the opposite of what we have in the NBA. So moving on to our next and final segment of the week, the NBA finals maybe being the worst we've seen. And again, it's 2 games. We'll see what happens, but going down 2-0, coming back to New York, it feels over, right? Like, what are you going to go in there now after losing 2 games at home to the Knicks? And honestly, Wemby getting shown that His style is awesome against multiple different types of players. He cannot be guarded by anyone on Oklahoma City. It was a clear mismatch every single game. Wemby went out there, he dominated Chet. He made Chet, who's an all-star, an NBA champion, look like a bum. And now he's going against Karl Anthony Towns, and at the end of the game against these Mitch Robinsons, and he's getting, he's still putting up good points, but he's making poor decisions at the end of the game. He can't drive and attempt to go to the basket. He has to settle for a long jump shot because there's a rim presence and guys who are very, very strong inside. Matchups make the fight. Matchups make the finals. It's a matchup type league. It's a matchup type game. But what the Knicks are doing is impressive. You can't help but root for an organization that has been in the dumps for as long as they are and as long as they have been. Jalen Brunson has really changed the culture over there. He's an incredible point guard. Karl Anthony Towns, the zestiest man in the NBA, is finding a way to really put on a tough performance and really show you that he might be a little fruity, but he can play defense. He's a strong man. He can shoot and he can provide that spacing. OG Anunoby, NBA champion OG Anunoby, a man I'm a very big fan of. He provides that wing depth. And so when you really start to shut down a lot of the options that the Spurs have, right? Dylan Harper's a rookie. A lot of these guys are quite young in their NBA career. I'm not going to come down on them too harshly. But I think we're starting to show the level of kind of grown man strength and grown man experience compared to you put OG Anunoby on a Dylan Harper or something like that, or on De'Aaron Fox, and then you can switch with the Miles Bridges, or you can switch with all of these guys off of the wing, and you can switch with their defenders who can take on a De'Aaron Fox or who can switch onto a Wemby. It becomes extremely difficult now for the Spurs to fight through a 7-game series after they just went the distance with OKC and they had competitive games throughout the playoffs. I think what you're seeing is a level of inexperience and then also a level of depth to the Knicks that they've built that is incredible. Knicks fans, you are a long time removed from the Thibodeau days where you were going to play your starters 42 minutes until one of them blew out their ankle or something happened. Now you see a team that in round one sacrificed certain games to play lineups that would pay dividends later on in the playoffs because now they can mix and match playoffs. They can mix and match lineups and they can say, hey, Shaman's going to come play here with our starters, or we're going to mix in McBride, or we're going to mix in Alvarez. Whoever has the hot hand can now step up and play in that lineup where the Spurs don't have that deep bench. You see the Carter Bryants, you see the Keldon Johnsons, you see the Champagnes. They're guys who are very talented individuals, young in their careers, and they're going to be excellent players one day. They already are. But when you're in the finals, the lights are bright, baby. You're going back to MSG. This might be over. And why I say this is the worst finals ever, if the league doesn't step in and do something a little silly with the reffing, which, fellas, let's be honest, they're going to do that. Game 3, we'll see what happens. There's never been a comeback from 3-0 in history, so it's a must-win for the Spurs. It's a must-win for the league if they want some revenue extension throughout the playoffs. We'll see what happens. I don't want to say or put anything out there. I would love to work for the NBA one day. I love you, Adam Silver. Great organization. But there have been reffing scandals in the past, and there have been clear ways in which the Spurs have been reffed differently in different games. You go back to the Oklahoma City games and the series there, it almost felt like you could guarantee by watching the first quarter who was going to win because depending on how the refs were calling the game. So let's see game 3. Must win for the Spurs, but honestly, extremely impressed by what the Knicks are doing. Extremely impressed by Jalen Brunson and company over there. Wemby and everything the Spurs have, I think they're going to get there. I have no doubt in my mind. It's just a matter of health and then these guys around Wemby getting better. It's great, but Wemby has his limitations, as every player does. He might be one of the greatest international players we've ever seen, but even Jokic and all these other men in the league cannot elevate their team to a level where one man is going to beat the depth of a squad like the New York Knicks. They were able to beat the Oklahoma City Thunder, I think, with a really great matchups, really great play, home court advantages, those sort of things, which now you don't have against the Knicks. You got to go in there. You got to win 2 in MSG, even up the series. Otherwise, your home court is now eliminated throughout the series, unless you can get to that game 7, obviously. Huge fan of the Knicks, huge fan of what the Spurs have going on. I think this has been an NBA Finals, though, where you could probably skip it. I mean, maybe tune into game three, but if game three goes to the Knicks, it's over. I mean, we've never had a comeback of 3-0 in the NBA in history. So if it goes there, game four in MSG will be a blowout. I would target Wemby to probably have a massive game. I imagine he goes over on his projected points. They'll probably play him as late as possible in the game, even if they're down, because, like I said, it's a must win. However, this is not gambling advice. This is not prediction advice. This is SamCentre, baby. So I really hope you enjoyed our show. This is our Monday show. Just a reminder, Wednesday is going to be CFL focused near the end of it, and the Friday show is going to have a little bit more of a UFC focus. That's what my passion is. I hope you like it. I hope you comment. I hope you subscribe. If you don't, that's all right too. Thanks for watching. I'm Sam. See you Wednesday.